Stop for a brief moment, because what you are about to hear may completely change the way you understand your love story. Imagine discovering that someone profoundly connected to your soul has been holding a truth so powerful and so unexpected that it could transform everything you believed about your future. What if the delays that have frustrated you were never indications of rejection? What if the silence you have been trying so hard to understand was actually preparing both of you for a moment that neither of you would have been emotionally ready to handle before? Now, most people spend years looking for answers in the world around them without realizing that the deepest revelations often begin somewhere within. The strange coincidences, the unexpected endings, the dreams that continue returning to your mind, and that quiet inner feeling that something life-changing is getting closer may not be random at all. They may be pieces of a much bigger story that has been unfolding quietly beyond your awareness. Today, we are going to explore why the most surprising news from your soulmate does not appear when you demand it. It arrives when you have finally become ready to understand what it truly means. Stay with me until the very end, because the final realization may completely transform the way you look at love, destiny, and the incredible journey that may still be waiting ahead of you. Many people move through life believing that if their soulmate genuinely had something important to tell them, it would have already happened. They imagine that destiny follows a simple timetable where love arrives at exactly the moment they want it. But life rarely operates according to the expectations of the conscious mind. The deepest messages do not appear through pressure, impatience, or endless searching. They often emerge quietly, after an invisible process has already been developing underneath the surface for months, or perhaps even years. What if the shocking news your soulmate carries is already making its way toward you? Not through ordinary words, but through the unseen currents of transformation that can connect two lives long before those people finally stand face to face. Every meaningful relationship begins somewhere that cannot be explained by logic alone. Before two people truly recognize one another, something can begin shifting within both of them. Old beliefs begin losing their hold. Priorities slowly start changing. Habits that once seemed permanent suddenly begin feeling empty. This is not necessarily coincidence. It may be the inner world preparing itself to receive something that the previous version of you could never have completely understood. The message your soulmate carries is not merely information. It is an invitation to become the person who is capable of receiving a deeper and more meaningful kind of love. Think about those moments when life unexpectedly moved you away from people, places, or dreams you once believed you could never live without. At the time, those experiences may have felt unfair, painful, or impossible to understand. Yet when you look back, many of those endings may have quietly redirected your path toward experiences that helped shape who you became. The same hidden process could be unfolding right now. What appears to be a delay may actually be preparation. What feels like silence may actually be movement happening somewhere beyond your awareness. The most powerful messages rarely arrive when the mind is overwhelmed by fear, desperation, or the desperate need for certainty. A restless heart can struggle to recognize what is standing directly in front of it. That is one reason life sometimes creates seasons of waiting. During these periods, your attention gradually begins turning inward. You start questioning old patterns. You become more conscious of emotional wounds you once ignored. You begin recognizing why certain relationships kept repeating the same painful lessons. Without even realizing it, you begin creating room for something completely different. And your soulmate may be experiencing a similar transformation of their own. While you are wondering why nothing seems to be happening, they could be confronting fears they have carried since childhood. They may be releasing old relationships, healing from disappointments, or discovering hidden parts of themselves they never realized were there. Two separate journeys can still be moving toward the same destination. Timing is not simply about calendars or dates. It is also about emotional readiness. This hidden message is not always communicated through spoken words. Sometimes it appears through unexpected opportunities, unlikely encounters, sudden changes in direction, or an unmistakable inner feeling that life is asking you to pay closer attention. The outer event becomes meaningful because an inner transformation has already taken place. Without that internal change, the exact same event might have appeared ordinary and passed by without being noticed. Many people constantly search for signs outside themselves, while failing to notice the quiet wisdom developing within them. Intuition becomes clearer as fear becomes quieter. Clarity begins appearing when constant mental noise starts fading. The more deeply you come to understand yourself, the easier it becomes to recognize the people, experiences, and paths that genuinely belong in your life. In that sense, your soulmate's surprising news is not rushing toward the person you once were. It is finding its way toward the person you are becoming, because only that emerging version of you may be capable of truly hearing its meaning and embracing the future it is meant to reveal. One of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding soulmate connections is the belief that love by itself is enough to bring two people together. Love can create the possibility for a meaningful relationship, but it does not automatically create the emotional maturity required to maintain one. Before an outer reunion can truly happen, something much more significant may need to take place within. The deepest relationships are not built on longing alone. They are built through transformation. If your soulmate genuinely has surprising news waiting for you, that message may arrive only after both of you have developed the ability to hear it without being controlled by fear, insecurity, or illusion. Real transformation is rarely dramatic at first. It often begins through quiet moments of discomfort that encourage you to examine parts of yourself you have spent years avoiding. You may start asking yourself why certain relationships repeatedly ended in similar ways. You may wonder why you kept attracting people who reflected your deepest fears rather than your deepest values. These questions do not mean there is something wrong with you. They can be invitations to become more conscious of the patterns influencing your emotional life. Many people search for a soulmate while unknowingly carrying emotional wounds that affect the way they experience love. Past disappointments, betrayals, rejection, or abandonment can create invisible expectations that quietly influence every new relationship. Without realizing it, the mind begins protecting itself by assuming that the past will happen again. It can become easier to expect disappointment than to remain open to a sincere and authentic connection. This protective pattern may feel safe, but it can also keep genuine love at a distance. Inner transformation asks you to move beyond these automatic emotional reactions. Instead of only asking why another person failed to love you in the way you needed, you begin asking what fears have been silently influencing your own choices. And this is where something powerful begins to change. You stop seeing your past only as a collection of things that happened to you, and start recognizing it as a source of understanding. You begin noticing the emotional patterns that once controlled your decisions. You recognize the difference between love and attachment, between intuition and fear, between genuine connection and the desire to fill an emotional emptiness. As that awareness grows, your entire relationship with love can begin changing. You no longer feel the same need to chase what keeps moving away from you. You no longer interpret every period of silence as proof that you have been forgotten. You begin understanding that sometimes distance creates the space necessary for two people to become stronger versions of themselves. And perhaps the most unexpected realization is that your soulmate may not be preparing to simply return to the relationship you once imagined. They may be preparing to meet the version of you that exists after everything you have learned, endured, released, and overcome. That is why the waiting period can feel so confusing. You are looking for an external event while life may be working on an internal transformation. You are asking when they will speak, while another question is quietly forming inside you. Who will you be when they finally do? because the answer to that question may matter more than the timing itself. The person you become during the silence may determine how you receive what comes after it. And sometimes, what feels like the longest delay is actually the final stage of preparation before something becomes possible that was impossible before. So if you have been wondering why the signs seem confusing, why the timing feels strange, or why the connection still occupies a quiet place in your heart, do not immediately assume that nothing is happening. Some of the most important changes in life happen before there is any visible evidence of them. The roots grow before the tree appears. The inner shift happens before the outer reality reflects it. And the message you have been waiting for may become meaningful only when you are finally able to hear it from a place of peace rather than fear. Your story may not be ending. It may simply be changing into something that the earlier version of you could not yet understand. You begin to notice how often you look for validation instead of seeking genuine mutual understanding. You recognize the moments when insecurity becomes louder than trust, and you start to understand that many emotional struggles are not actually being created by what is happening in the present, but by unresolved experiences that have remained within you from the past. As this awareness continues to develop, something deeply meaningful begins to shift. Your identity gradually becomes less dependent on the approval of other people. You no longer feel the same need to pursue those who repeatedly bring confusion, uncertainty, or emotional instability into your life. You stop seeing every silence as a rejection and every delay as evidence that something has been permanently lost. Instead of trying to control every possible outcome, you begin developing the confidence to allow life to unfold while still protecting your own sense of value and self-respect. This quiet inner confidence changes more than the way you see yourself. It also begins influencing the type of relationships, experiences, and people you naturally allow into your life. At the same time, your soulmate may also be moving through a transformation that is just as important, even if you cannot see it happening. They may be facing fears they once refused to acknowledge, letting go of attachments that have stopped serving their growth, or learning lessons that could never have been understood through comfort and familiarity alone. Their journey may look completely different from yours. Their circumstances may have nothing in common with what you are experiencing on the surface. And yet, both paths can still be moving toward a similar destination. Growth rarely happens in exactly the same way for two people, because every individual carries a different history, different wounds, different beliefs, and different lessons. Still, a genuine connection often requires both people to become more emotionally honest before they can truly recognize, understand, and appreciate one another. This process can sometimes feel frustrating because much of it happens outside the limits of ordinary time and visible circumstances. There may be periods when you look around and honestly believe that absolutely nothing is changing. You may wonder why things remain quiet when you have been hoping for movement, clarity, or some unmistakable sign. Yet beneath that apparent stillness, old beliefs may be slowly dissolving, while new perspectives are quietly taking root. What appears to be a delay can actually be a season of preparation that you cannot yet see. Every difficult experience, every unexpected ending, every moment of loneliness, and every period of deep reflection can contribute to the person you are gradually becoming. When your inner world begins to change, your external reality often starts responding in ways that seem surprising at first. Opportunities can begin appearing in places where there was previously only uncertainty. Encounters that once seemed completely impossible can suddenly become natural and effortless. Conversations can happen at moments that feel almost perfectly timed. The shocking news your soulmate carries may therefore not simply involve some future event, dramatic confession, or extraordinary declaration. It can also involve a deeper realization that the person who is finally ready to receive that message is no longer the same person who once desperately searched for it. As you become more self-aware, emotionally grounded, and connected to your own truth, you create the conditions where genuine love can enter your life without constantly being overshadowed by fear, confusion, insecurity, or the emotional weight of everything that happened before. Life has a fascinating way of hiding its biggest turning points inside moments that initially look completely ordinary. Many people imagine that if something truly extraordinary were preparing to happen in their romantic life, it would come with obvious signs, dramatic events, and undeniable certainty. But reality often moves in a much more mysterious and subtle way. The most unexpected changes frequently do not announce themselves before they arrive. Instead, they appear quietly inside circumstances that may initially seem confusing, disappointing, inconvenient, or completely unrelated to love. The shocking news connected to your soulmate may not arrive in the exact form you have imagined, because transformation has a way of disrupting expectations before it reveals the deeper truth underneath them. Human beings naturally become attached to specific outcomes. We create mental pictures of how love is supposed to look, when it should happen, what the other person should say, and even what circumstances should surround the relationship. These expectations can give the mind a comforting feeling of control, but they can also become invisible walls that prevent you from recognizing something valuable when it arrives in an unfamiliar form. When reality develops differently from the picture you created, your mind may immediately interpret the unexpected as failure, instead of seeing it as a new possibility. An opportunity may be dismissed simply because it does not resemble an old fantasy. A meaningful connection may be overlooked because it enters your life through circumstances you never predicted. Sometimes, the greatest surprise is not the event itself, but the realization that what you once believed you wanted was never actually what your heart truly needed. Unexpected transformation often begins with an ending. A relationship that once appeared permanent can suddenly come to a close. A plan you spent years building may unexpectedly fall apart. Someone you relied upon may walk away without giving you the explanation you hoped for. During these moments, it is natural to believe that life is moving against you, that everything is being taken away, or that the future you imagined is disappearing. Yet endings possess a unique ability to create space for experiences that could never have entered your life while the old situation remained in place. What feels like a painful loss today can quietly become the doorway through which something completely different enters your future. Your attention naturally focuses on what has disappeared, while life may already be rearranging circumstances around what is about to come next. There are also times when change enters your life through simple coincidences that seem almost too meaningful to ignore. You decide to take a different road home and unexpectedly encounter someone you never expected to see. You reconnect with an old acquaintance after years of silence. You almost cancel a conversation, yet something encourages you to continue, and that conversation ends up staying in your thoughts long after it is over. A decision that appeared completely insignificant can unexpectedly become the first step toward an entirely different direction. These moments remind you that life is not always shaped by enormous decisions or dramatic turning points. Sometimes, the smallest events can carry the greatest consequences because they happen at precisely the moment when you are finally ready to experience their meaning. The same kind of unexpected movement may also be happening within your soulmate's life. While you may imagine that they are standing still, waiting, or completely unaware of what is unfolding, they may actually be experiencing profound changes that neither of you could have predicted. A change in their career, a personal awakening, the ending of an unhealthy relationship, a difficult emotional experience, or a powerful realization about what genuinely matters to them can completely redirect the course of their life. From the outside, these experiences may appear unrelated to your connection. You may never even know that these events are happening. Yet they can be preparing that person to approach love with greater honesty, emotional maturity, self-awareness, and openness than they were capable of before. Sometimes the greatest surprise is discovering that two people do not need to consciously understand the entire journey for their lives to be changing in meaningful ways. One person may be learning how to trust again, while the other is learning how to communicate honestly. One may be releasing an attachment to the past, while the other is finally becoming comfortable with vulnerability. One may be discovering their own worth, while the other is realizing that emotional connection requires responsibility and consistency. Their lessons may appear completely separate, but they can still be preparing both individuals for healthier experiences of love. One of the most unexpected truths about love is that it often begins to appear after you stop trying so hard to force it into existence. This does not mean that you should abandon your desire for connection or convince yourself that you no longer care. It means releasing the exhausting need to control every detail of how, when, and through whom love must arrive. When your attention returns to your own development, your personal purpose, and your inner stability, you naturally become more present in your own life. You begin noticing opportunities that you previously ignored because your attention was focused somewhere else. You recognize genuine kindness instead of constantly chasing excitement that leaves you emotionally empty. Your choices become increasingly guided by wisdom rather than fear. And in this state, life has more room to surprise you because your vision is no longer restricted by desperation, anxiety, or rigid expectations. You may begin realizing that peace can be more meaningful than intensity. Consistency can become more attractive than unpredictable attention. Emotional safety can start to feel more valuable than the temporary rush created by uncertainty. You may no longer feel impressed by someone simply because they are difficult to understand or emotionally unavailable. Instead, you begin appreciating people who communicate clearly, respect your boundaries, and show through their actions that they genuinely value your presence. This is another indication that your inner transformation is becoming visible in your external choices. You are no longer choosing from the same emotional place where you once made decisions. The shocking news your soulmate brings may ultimately have far less to do with dramatic words and much more to do with unexpected timing. It may arrive after a season in which you were convinced that absolutely nothing was changing. It may emerge from circumstances that you previously considered disappointments or setbacks. It may come through an ordinary conversation, an unexpected meeting, a message you never anticipated, or a situation that initially seems completely unrelated to romance. What makes it shocking may not simply be what the person says, but the realization that everything has somehow led to this particular moment. Perhaps the most important part is that you will not meet that moment as the same person you were before. You may have spent months or even years learning lessons that seemed pointless at the time. You may have experienced rejection that forced you to discover your own worth. You may have gone through silence that taught you not to depend upon constant reassurance. You may have lost people who once seemed impossible to live without, only to discover that their absence created room for you to become stronger. You may have questioned your path repeatedly, wondering why certain doors kept closing. But sometimes, those closed doors were not evidence that you were being denied love. They were protecting you from repeating patterns that your future self would no longer accept.